What's up guys, and welcome to this review of Star Wars Brotherhood by Mike Chen, the latest Star Wars book. This one is set between the events of Attack of the Clones and Star Wars The Clone Wars. In fact, it very much feels like a leading off point to Star Wars The Clone Wars. It feels like it's connecting those two things together. Here we have Obi-Wan Kenobi being sent to Cato Neimoidia after a terrorist attack kills many people, and the Separatists are saying they didn't do it. So he's got to go in and find out, well, who the hell did do it. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker has just been promoted to a Jedi Knight, and he's getting to know what that means, what's in his future it seems, while also dealing with the fact that he's now married to Padme, and he has to try to keep that secret. Also, Count Dooku has a new apprentice. And that's, in a nutshell, what this story is about. There is a thriller element of Obi-Wan investigating this terrorist attack. There's Anakin trying to figure out what being a Jedi Knight means and what's his future going to be as a Jedi. And then there's all the mystery, political stuff and thriller elements going on all around that. What did I think of Star Wars Brotherhood? It's okay at best, I would say. The problem with this book is that it starts off really well, really interesting with the terrorist attack, with the aftermath of that, and then setting up what this book's going to be. And then in the middle point of this book, or maybe not even that, maybe like 2/3 into this book, there's a huge, dramatic, action-packed, thrilling moment in there, which is really cool and interesting. Lots of ideas and debates and some action thrown in there as well. But between all those elements, everything just kind of meanders and doesn't feel like it's in a hurry to go anywhere. There's a bit of repetition all over the place and not a lot of momentum in this story. It's a slow-paced story in many ways, and it's disappointing that it's a slow-paced story when there's actually not a lot going on. So that's what I think of in a nutshell. The rest of this review though, I'm going to be going into some light spoiler territories. I'm not going to reveal everything, but just be aware there are going to be a few things thrown out here about certain characters who appear, certain moments, because I do have to elaborate on that stuff, so just be warned, there will be some spoilers. It should also be noted now that I did not read this book, I listened to it as an audiobook, so a very different experience. Just to quickly sum up what that was like, I liked the narrator of this audiobook. I think he done a good job of mimicking the voices and accents of certain characters. Surprisingly impressed at the fact that it is a man. He done a pretty good job at capturing the voices of like Padme and Amidala. Of course, it does sound like a man doing a woman's voice, but he done a good job nonetheless. And I've heard worse. So yeah, that does impact the experience. There's all the sound effects and music and stuff like that in the background, which I will say during the action scenes, that stuff really did overpower things a bit, to the point where you've got all these sounds like blasters and explosions and lightsabers swinging and stuff, and then the narration's going on, and it's like, right, I can't focus on one of these elements at once. In fact, I couldn't even hear the narration at one point because there's so much going on. So there is that issue in the audiobook form. So, let's get into it. In many ways, this does feel like a overly long episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars, one that would have been like the premiere episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars to set things off. And I kind of like that. Especially the first half of this book does feel like the Clone Wars in certain ways. You get the connections of like, how did they go from Obi-Wan having his long hair in episode 2 to having the short hair in the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith. There is that little connection there where he gets a haircut at certain points. And then they talk about how they're going from being Jedi to generals, and then there's like, they get their armor plate and put on top of their uniforms or Jedi robes and stuff like that. So it does a good job of just giving us these little things that connect the dots here and there. Totally unnecessary, we don't need to know that stuff I suppose, but it's nice that it's there. The whole Cato Neimoidia stuff I think starts off really well. We do get viewpoints from the Cato Neimoidians at times, a Cato Neimoidian called Rughala, I think her name is, or Rug I'm just going to say just to be safe. And she's an interesting character. She's almost like an assassin-like character who's now a royal guard it seems, and she's pretty cool and interesting with a pessimistic view on things. And there's not a huge amount to her character, but she is pivotal. It does give us a viewpoint of her culture and people from a certain perspective, and we do get the viewpoints of other Neimoidians and what they're thinking about things. One of the things I really liked about this book is that its exploration of Cato Neimoidia, because we do have Cato Neimoidia and the Neimoidians. We then have the Trade Federation, we've then got Newt Gunray and what we assumed was the Trade Federation. Well, it turns out that Newt Gunray is actually part of a separatist group of the Trade Federation. He is part of what they are calling terrorists. The Trade Federation is its own thing, Cato Neimoidia is its own thing, Newt Gunray is his own thing. I think the book does a really good job at differentiating them and pointing all that stuff out and that. Because if you just watch the films, it's not entirely clear. Are all the Neimoidians on the side of the separatists? No, they're not. Is the Trade Federation on the side of the separatists? Turns out, no, they're not. It's just Newt Gunray's faction from the Trade is, and it's a fascinating thing. I don't think it goes into huge details about all that stuff, but it does point it out, which is cool. So the bulk of this book is Obi-Wan investigating this bombing on Cato Neimoidia, going down to the wreckage, seeing the Neimoidians, seeing how they are so emotional and frustration and they're all upset and stuff, while he's trying to be there being level-headed and just get the facts as they are. That stuff's really interesting. That does come up in the debates about all of what's going on in this book, is that do you want the facts as it is, or do you just want revenge? You want some payback for what's happened? And it deals with that in really interesting ways, particularly with the form of a character called Keetar, who is a very well written, very antagonistic, annoying, frustrating character, but in the best ways possible, in that he's got a certain motivation and goal, and no matter what, he just cannot see that he is on the bad side of things. He's a antagonist who really thinks he's the protagonist, and it's really well written and really well done. Probably one of the highlights of the whole book, his character, even though he is a frustrating person as to see from the viewpoint of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's trying to just be level-headed and like say, look, this is what we know. You're reacting from emotion here. And again, that all links together. The themes of the book really are highlighted with the character of Keetar. On the other side of things though, Anakin Skywalker. A lot of Anakin Skywalker stuff is not entirely all that interesting. It starts off with him dealing with the wedding of Padme Amidala. It kind of connects into the recent book, Queen's Shadow or Queen's Peril, or I can't remember what off the top of my head what it is, but it's the recent book that I've just reviewed on my channel. It almost feels like this is like showing you Anakin's side of things as that's going on. And that stuff's interesting. We find out that Obi-Wan actually was really curious about Anakin and Padme's relationship right from the word go. It seems like he knew almost immediately that there was something going on between them. It's not overtly stated, but he's definitely spying on them, he's definitely keeping an eye on them, and he definitely knows something's going on. So that's really cool and fascinating that right from the word go, Obi-Wan Kenobi might have known that they were married and he just didn't say anything. So yeah, that's a whole new element to that character and relationship that's kind of being elaborated on a bit more. And that stuff's interesting. Then Anakin gets to learn how to be a Jedi Knight, and he's thrown in to basically mentor a bunch of Padawans and younglings, and this stuff kind of rubbed me the wrong way. A lot of this stuff with Anakin mentoring these younglings and Padawans is obviously him learning about himself at the same time and what's next to him and what it means to be a Jedi. Does he really want to do this and stuff? Where does he fit in? That stuff's interesting, but the problem is that he gets in this very close-knitted relationship with a youngling called Mill, and the reason this rubs me the wrong way is that in certain parts she ends up being his Padawan in a certain regard, just unofficially. And it's like, well, that kind of defeats the point of Ahsoka Tano, and it kind of makes Ahsoka less significant in Anakin's life and role. So, I don't know, why throw in this new Padawan when you've got Ahsoka right around the corner who's going to be really significant and important? And if Ahsoka's not his first, then why is she so important to him? I don't know, yeah, it just feels like a poor choice there to have him have this one connection to this one specific youngling. I'm fine with him looking over this group of younglings, but he really does focus in on this one person, who is a decent character in her own right. She's a very empathetic Jedi. She can almost feel the emotions, and she can't really control it very well, and yeah, not a huge deal for her to do except for to pick up on emotions and feelings of other characters and to figure out, does she want to be a Jedi? And if she doesn't, what's she gonna do about it? So that stuff is somewhat interesting, but a lot of Anakin's storyline and a lot of her storyline does feel like it's in there just to give them something to do. It doesn't always feel necessary. And talking about a character who can read people's feelings and thoughts, the writing of this book really does dive into what people are thinking all the time. In fact, so much of what's happening in this book is just from people thinking it and examining it and exploring it, and it's very overly descriptive, I think, at times about what people are thinking, what people are feeling. It becomes a bit frustrating and annoying. It's just like, get on with it already. We get it already. You'd sum this up in like a few words, or there's paragraphs about what's running through their minds. One of the cool is the first time that Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker meet a son. It's really cool because we got her origin story in a prior book and even in the original animated show, which is now that's sort of canonical in certain regards now because of that book. Interesting that for much of this story, she's just like a posing like political figure to Obi-Wan's investigation. She's there on behalf of the Separatists, trying to make sure the Separatists aren't being just blamed and accused of things outright, and she really gets involved with Kitar as well, and that's very clear and it's all very well done with how manipulated. There's a recurring thing for Anakin here. He not get along. This is something that's have Anakin Skywalker trained to be a Jedi. He's very antagonistic, and there's constant scowls and feelings, and Anakin's picking up on it. I thought there was a nice little touch to flesh out Mace Windu and to flesh out his relationship with Anakin as well. But it doesn't actually amount to much. At the end of the day, that's kind of going on in the background. There's no like resolution to that. They did never together and sort things out or whatever, or butt heads. It's just, yeah, they don't like it. So I mentioned how about 2/3 of the way through, this is a accused of hiding the Republic attack on Cato Neimoidia. And this is the highlight of the book, where they are going on about, right, did the Republic wars over? And then at the same time, because clearly Cato Neimoidia does not kill points. Kitar gets involved, he gets very emotional, the emotions win the day, and boom, tensions erupt in a big and it's really cool, really exciting, it's really well done. The build-up is great throughout, and that it starts off slow, tension builds, and then it escalates to action. What happens after that is a bit different though, because things do slow down again at that point when we do actually start wrapping things up a bit. And this leads into what I think is the biggest problem with the book, is that there isn't an ending. The book, the main story here is who done the attack on Cato Neimoidia? Well, the evidence, hardly all on one data pad by the way, the evidence suggests that it could be the Republic. The evidence also suggests that it could be the Separatists. They use the same bombs. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? It doesn't really even make any sense whatsoever. So the Separatists and the Republic could both be blamed for this. Right, so who did it? Let's look into that, shall we? No, let's not, because they just don't find the answer. We don't find out who did it. We can assume it was Asajj Ventress and the Separatists because they're the bad guys. But the book doesn't state that. It doesn't make it clear. In fact, the book really strongly hints that there's a third party involved that isn't the Separatists, that isn't the Republic, and that they are both being set up. In which case, well, who is it then? We don't know, and we don't get an answer to that. So it's very anticlimactic in that way, in that the main thread of the narrative, the main investigation that Obi-Wan's doing, just doesn't have an ending. And it's weird. Like, if it is the Separatists, if it is Asajj Ventress, yeah, it's predictable, yeah, we can speculate that it's that, but why not just overtly state it? Why not tell us that that's the answer? Even if it is going to be a less satisfying one, at least it's there, at least we have an answer. So yeah, very disappointing in that regard. So that's Star Wars Brotherhood. I do like moments of this book. I like the big tension moments at the trial. I like the opening moments of this when it is setting up the whole situation and exploring the characters and their introductions. I like the ways in which it connects Attack of the Clones to the Clone Wars, and it acts as a bridge between those two things. And yeah, I do have problems with certain ways in which it was written. I do think it delves into the emotions and thoughts a bit too much, and I don't think there's a huge amount of story actually happening here, especially since it doesn't have a proper end. But it is somewhat enjoyable. And yeah, do I recommend it? I think if you're a big fan of the prequel era storytelling of Attack of the Clones, of the Clone Wars, then go for it. It's not the greatest story ever told, but there are some interesting moments, there are some interesting themes and debates in there which it does do a good job of exploring. And if you've liked this review of Star Wars Brotherhood, check out my channel for more reviews of all the Star Wars books, TV shows, films, and comic books, and so on and so forth. And of course, I've got a bunch of other film and TV content if you're watching on my film and TV channel. Until next time though, why not subscribe to my channel, and of course follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grandbird. Thanks for watching.